Thank you, Mr Speaker. I take a call on the Public Finance Fiscal Responsibility Amendment Bill on behalf of New Zealand First. And we will be different to the other parties in that we will not be supporting this bill. And the reason we're not supporting it is mainly because we think it's irrelevant and we think it's totally unnecessary. Mr Speaker, this Parliament currently has something like 64 government bills on the order paper. 64 government bills. And it is incredible how much legislation should be coming before this House instead of irrelevant bills like this that are basically just, again, moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic and tinkering around the edges in terms of finance and taxes. And we believe if the government was doing its job correctly and as it should be, this would absolutely be totally unnecessary. And basically this is just another waste of parliamentary time when they should be getting on with a lot more important things on the order paper. And we only have to look back to things such as the Rena disaster, Mr Speaker, where there was legislation on the books that was sitting there for something like 2 or 3 years waiting just to be put through, that had the buy-in from every party in this House, and the government did not move that legislation on. And because they were tardy and didn't move the legislation on, the Rena then hit the rocks. We were then caught with our pants down, literally, and as a result it cost the New Zealand taxpayer another $30 or $40 million because that legislation hadn't been put through. At the same time, Mr Speaker, things such as the War Pensions Review that sat around for 2 years under this government and finally has been moved on in the last couple of months. But again, with our senior veterans getting longer and longer in the tooth and older all the time, desperately waiting for this government to move on the 170 recommendations of the Law Commission, that it took 2 years to get that finally into action, and we commend the government for doing it finally, but it took 2 years while rubbish like this is put before the House, which is totally unnecessary. And if the government was actually doing its job properly, and if it was overseeing and managing and governing the public service as it should be, then this would be totally irrelevant. The bill proposes to amend the Public Finance Act to include 3 new principles: the extension of an existing principle regarding revenue and a new reporting requirement to assess past fiscal strategy. These changes are unnecessary. The principles are, in fact, common sense. There is no need to write them into legislation. It goes without saying that people elect a government to manage resources effectively and efficiently. Anything else would be wasteful, even reckless. Any government that can't manage resources effectively and efficiently will soon be found out and punished by the electorate. It also goes without saying that a government should formulate fiscal strategy with regard to monetary policy. By definition, macroeconomic policy is to take into account the whole economy. There's something seriously wrong with a government that does not see the bigger picture. And in that respect, and we've heard other speakers tonight allude to the Reserve Bank Amendment Bill brought to this House by the Right Honourable Winston Peters, in terms of having a full review after 30 years of the Reserve Bank Act and seeing what other mechanisms the Reserve Bank could put in place to have our economy performing better, and in terms of the New Zealand dollar and the overvaluation of the New Zealand dollar, that was dismissed outright by this government, absolutely dismissed outright by this government, didn't want to bar of it, didn't even want to put it through to Select Committee to consider it, to look after 30 years at a review of the Reserve Bank. So this is absolute hypocrisy on the part of this government, that on the one hand they're not prepared to look at the Reserve Bank, but on the other hand they want to tinker around with the Public Finance Bill. The third principle states that government should formulate fiscal policy with regard to its likely impact on present and future generations. Well, that in fact is an admission by the government that has failed to take these matters into account in the past. If they're having to put that into legislation now, what were they doing before? We don't oppose the need for governments to be explicit about any intergenerational trade-offs their fiscal policies may have. We're simply saying that it is unnecessary to write this into legislation. It is nothing more than another symbolic gesture from the national government. The Public Finance Act also provides a legal framework for the financial management system of the New Zealand government. It controls the manner in which Parliament keeps a watch on government expenditure. This is fundamental for our democracy. It provides an essential check and balance which ensures transparency and accountability. We believe that the Act, in its current present form, is fit for purpose and does not need further amendment. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This government should be giving jobs as its priority, such as the parliamentary inquiry into manufacturing. Again, this government dismisses what is a cross-party parliamentary inquiry into the manufacturing sector in this country, which has seen 1,300 companies go out of business in the 4 years that National's been in power. That's seen more than 40,000 jobs go out of the manufacturing sector while this government's been in power. So while they tinker around, playing around with the Public Finance Act, they ignore a very vital manufacturing inquiry that has been put forward by the opposition parties to seriously look at how can we get manufacturing in this country back on its feet. We need policies to stimulate growth. This bill does nothing to get New Zealanders back into work. It does nothing to boost exports. And again, as we've seen with the Reserve Bank Act situation, this does nothing to address the seriously overvalued New Zealand dollar. It also does nothing to develop new industries or broaden the productive base of the economy. We all only had to look at the Q&A session in the weekend and look at the suggested ideas that were put forward there. So, some of them were a little bit extreme, but others were interesting concepts. But again, what did we see from the Minister, Judith Collins? Basically, cold water poured on any good ideas that any New Zealanders who came forward put forward to her. Basically, typical of this government, it was let's not listen to anybody else, let's just do what we want to do. And this bill is a reflection of that they just want to tinker with an existing act instead of getting on with new business, new growth, new opportunities, growing the New Zealand economy and looking at real ways to improve the economy. So New Zealand First will not be supporting this bill. We think it's a waste of time. We think the government should be getting on with some of the other 64 government bills that are on the order paper that have greater impact on New Zealanders and on the New Zealand economy. And this is only window dressing and another glossy attempt for National just to put nice words and nice rhetoric around a government bill, but at the end of the day, it's just playing and tinkering around the edges.
David Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to take a short call. I think Nick Smith did a very good speech